Some wolves are born to rule. Others are born to survive. But when the most dangerous predator in the north walks into your life wearing a stranger's smile, you don't get to choose which one you are anymore. This is the story of a woman who spent 10 years running from monsters, only to fall in love with the worst one of all. And before this tale ends, you'll see how empires built on blood can crumble from a single heartbeat. So buckle up, stick around till the end, and drop a like with your city name in the comments. Let's see where my pack is watching from tonight. The storm hit the mountain pass 3 hours before midnight, turning the narrow trail into a death trap of mud and ice. Ariavale pressed her back against the rock face, boots sliding on wet stone as wind tore at her coat. Rain hammered down in sheets, so thick she could barely see 10 feet ahead. Lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating the valley below for just a second. Long enough to see them. 6 wolves. Maybe 7. Moving fast through the trees. Her heart kicked against her ribs. She'd been careful. So damn careful for 10 years, never staying anywhere longer than 3 months, never using her real name, never letting anyone close enough to ask questions. But somehow they'd found her anyway. She pushed off the rock and ran, feet pounding against mud, lungs burning as the trail climbed higher. The pack house in Millridge was 2 miles back. Too far. The ranger station was abandoned this time of year. No help coming, just her and whatever strength she had left in her legs. Thunder rolled overhead. Behind her, something howled. Not a wolf. Worse, a shifter mid-change, vocal cords stretching between human and beast. The sound drilled into her spine, ancient and wrong. The trail curved sharply. She took it too fast, boots losing traction. Her shoulders slammed into granite. Pain burst white behind her eyes. She stumbled forward, gasping, trying to keep moving, but her legs were shaking now. 10 years of running and hiding, and it was all going to end on some nameless mountain in the middle of nowhere. A shadow dropped from the rocks above. Arya twisted, bringing her knife up, but the figure moved faster. A hand caught her wrist, iron strong, and spun her behind him in one smooth motion. She hit the ground hard, tasting copper. The man stood between her and the trail, rain streaming off his shoulders. Tall, broad, dark hair plastered to his skull. He didn't have a weapon. Didn't look like he needed one. 3 wolves burst around the bend, lips pulled back over teeth too large for their jaws. Still shifting, still half wild with the change. The man didn't move. The lead wolf lunged. The stranger caught it midair by the throat and slammed it into the rock face so hard the crack echoed over the storm. The animal went limp, dropped like a sack of meat. The other 2 froze. The man took 1 step forward, just 1, and the wolves turned and ran, crashing back down the trail like the hounds of hell were behind them instead of in front. Silence. Just rain and wind and Arya's ragged breathing. The stranger turned. His eyes caught the lightning. Pale gray. Almost silver. The kind of eyes that saw straight through skin and bone into whatever you'd buried deepest. He extended a hand. Rain dripped from his fingers. Arya stared at it. Every instinct screamed at her to run. Nothing that moved like that fought like that, was safe. But her legs wouldn't hold her up anymore, and those wolves would circle back once they remembered how to be brave. She took his hand. His grip was warm despite the freezing rain. He pulled her up effortlessly, steadying her when she swayed. "You hurt?" His voice was rough, deep, the kind that rumbled in your chest. "I'm fine." "You're bleeding." She touched her face. Her fingers came away red. Must have split her cheek when she hit the rocks. "Still fine." She pulled her hand back, putting distance between them. "Thanks for the save." Those weren't random rogues. He glanced down the trail where the wolves had disappeared. They were hunting you specifically. It wasn't a question. Arya's hand drifted to the knife at her belt. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Right." He studied her for a long moment, rain streaming between them. Then he shrugged. "Storm's getting worse. Town's that way. You should move before they remember how many teeth they have." He turned and started down the trail. Arya watched him go. Watched how he moved through the darkness like he owned it. Watched how the mountain itself seemed to bend around him, making space. "Wait." He stopped but didn't turn around. "Who are you?" "Nobody important." He looked back over his shoulder. Lightning flashed again, throwing his face into sharp relief. "Name's Cale Mercer. And you should probably learn how to run faster. Then he was gone, swallowed by rain and shadow. Okay. The boarding house smelled like old wood and may oil. Arya sat on the edge of the narrow bed, towel pressed to her cheek, watching water drip from her coat onto the floor. Her hands were still shaking. Those wolves had been young, reckless, but they'd known exactly where to find her, which meant someone had talked. Someone in Millridge had seen through her fake ID and plain clothes and recognized what she really was. A veil. The last veil. She closed her eyes, and for just a second, she was 12 years old again, hiding in the root cellar while her family died upstairs. Screaming, so much screaming, and then silence, which was worse. Her fingers found the scar on her left shoulder blade. Claw marks. 4 parallel lines where her father had shoved her through the cellar door and taken the attack meant for her. 10 years. She'd survived 10 years by being invisible, by never showing her face, never using her power, never giving anyone a reason to remember her name. And tonight, some stranger with silver eyes had saved her life without asking for a single thing in return, which meant he either wanted something worse or he had no idea who she was. Neither option made her feel better. She saw him again 2 days later at the trading post. Arya was loading supplies into her pack, preparing to leave Millridge before whoever sent those wolves tried again, when she felt eyes on her back. She turned. Cale Mercer leaned against the porch railing, arms crossed, watching her with that same unsettling calm he'd had during the storm. "You're still here," he said. "So are you." I asked around. He pushed off the railing and walked closer. In daylight, she could see him better. Hard jaw, scars on his knuckles, the kind of face that belonged to someone who'd seen the worst parts of the world and hadn't blinked. "Nobody in town knows who you are." "That's because I'm nobody." "Funny. That's what I said." His mouth curved slightly, not quite a smile. "But those wolves didn't attack nobody. They attacked someone specific, someone worth risking their necks for." Arya shouldered her pack. "I'm leaving. Whatever you think you know, forget it." "Where are you going?" "Somewhere else." "That's not a place." "It's the only place I've got." She started walking. He fell into step beside her. She stopped. He stopped. "I don't need an escort." "Didn't offer one." He nodded toward the mountains. "But that trail leads to Coldridge Pass. Word is, there's another storm coming tonight, worse than the last one, and the pass freezes over when the temperature drops. You'll be stuck up there for days." "I'll take my chances." "No, you won't." Something shifted in his voice, harder. "Because there's at least 4 more rogues camped in the valley waiting for you to do exactly what you're doing right now, and this time I won't be there to break their necks." Her hand went to her knife. "How do you know that?" "Same way I know you're running from something a lot bigger than a few desperate wolves." He met her eyes. "I pay attention." They stood there in the middle of the dirt road, wind kicking up dust between them. Somewhere down the street, a door slammed. Dogs barked. "What do you want?" Arya asked quietly. "Nothing. Everyone wants something. Not from you." He tilted his head slightly. "But if you're smart, you'll wait out the storm. Rest. Let them think you're trapped. Then move when they're not expecting it." "And where exactly am I supposed to wait? The boarding house? They already found me there." Cale was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I've got a cabin 2 miles north, off the main trails. No one knows about it except me." "Yeah, that's not suspicious at all." "Didn't say it wasn't suspicious. Said it was safe." He shrugged. "Your choice. Freeze to death in the pass or risk whatever you think I'm going to do to you. Either way, I've got hunting to do." He turned and walked away. Arya stood there, pack heavy on her shoulders, watching him disappear around the corner. Every logical bone in her body screamed to get as far from Cale Mercer as humanly possible, but logic was what got people killed. Instinct kept them alive. And her instinct said those wolves weren't going to stop, that whoever sent them had resources and patience and enough anger to burn down half the territory just to watch her die. She looked at the mountains, then back toward where Kyle had gone. Damn it, Jantit. The cabin was exactly what he'd promised. Small, hidden, so far off any marked trail that you'd have to know it existed to find it. A single room with a fireplace, a bed, and a table. No decorations, no personal items, the kind of place someone used when they didn't want to be found. Kael was skinning a deer when she arrived. "Door's open," he called without looking up. Arya stepped inside. It was warm. Actually warm. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting orange light across rough wooden walls. She set her pack down carefully, hand still near her knife. "You can put that away." Kael glanced at her. "If I wanted you dead, you'd be dead." Comforting. Wasn't meant to be comforting, was meant to be true. He finished with the deer and stood, wiping blood off his hands with a rag. "You hungry?" Her stomach answered before she could. She hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. Kael's mouth twitched. "I'll take that as a yes." He cooked the venison over the fire, simple and efficient, no wasted movement. Arya sat at the table and watched him work, watched how his hands moved, watched how the firelight caught the scars on his forearms. "You fight a lot?" she asked. "Enough." "Where'd you learn?" "Here and there." "That's not an answer. Neither was yours when I asked where you were going." He flipped the meat. "We all got secrets. Difference is, I'm not pretending I don't have them." Fair point. They ate in silence. The venison was good, better than good, seasoned with something sharp and earthy that made her tongue tingle. "What is that?" she asked. "Wolfsbane." She nearly choked. "You're feeding me wolfsbane?" "Processed wolfsbane. Takes the poison out, leaves the flavor." He took another bite. "Also makes shifters sick if they try to track you by scent. You'll sweat it out over the next few days. Anyone smelling you will think twice before getting close." Arya set down her fork. "You know what I am." "I know what they think you are. Doesn't mean I care." He met her eyes across the table. "Eat. You need your strength. She should leave. Right now. Before whatever this was turned into something worse. But the cabin was warm, and the food was good. And for the first time in 2 days, her hands had stopped shaking. So she picked up her fork and kept eating. Amasir. The storm hit just after dark, exactly like Kael said it would. Wind screamed through the trees, rattling the shutters, turning the world outside into a howling black void. Snow fell so thick it looked like the sky was collapsing. Arya stood at the window, watching ice accumulate on the glass. "They'll be hunkered down," Kael said from behind her. "No one's stupid enough to move in this. You'd be surprised what desperate people do. Desperate's different from stupid. Desperate makes you creative. Stupid makes you dead." He added another log to the fire. "Get some sleep. I'll take first watch." "I don't sleep around strangers." "Then I guess you're going to have a long night." She turned to look at him. He'd settled into the chair near the door, arms crossed, eyes half-lidded but alert, patient, like he could sit there for days without moving. "Why are you helping me?" "Does it matter?" "Yeah, it does." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Because 10 years ago someone helped me when they didn't have to, and I've been paying that debt forward ever since." "That's it? You're just a nice guy?" "I didn't say I was nice." His eyes opened fully, catching the firelight. "I said someone helped me. There's a difference." Arya studied him, trying to see past the scars and the calm, and the way he moved like violence was a language he spoke fluently, trying to understand what kind of man saved a stranger on a mountain and then fed her poison just to keep her safe. "You're dangerous," she said quietly. "Yeah." He didn't blink. "I am. But not to me. Not tonight." It wasn't a promise, but somehow it felt like one anyway. Arya moved to the bed and sat down, boots still on, knife still at her belt. She didn't sleep, neither did he. They just sat there in the firelit darkness, listening to the storm tear the world apart outside, while inside, two people who didn't trust anyone slowly learned how to exist in the same space. 3 days. The storm lasted 3 days, and by the time it finally broke, the mountains were buried under 6 feet of snow. The pass was completely blocked. The valley trails were impassable. Arya was trapped. With him. Kyle didn't seem bothered. He hunted in the mornings, cooked in the afternoons, and kept watch at night. He didn't ask questions, didn't push, didn't do anything except exist alongside her with a patience that felt almost inhuman. On the fourth morning, Arya woke to find him outside, moving through forms in the snow. Fighting stances, blocks and strikes and footwork so precise it looked like a dance. She watched from the window as he flowed from one position to the next, breath misting in the freezing air, muscles coiling and releasing with mechanical efficiency. When he finished, he turned and looked directly at her, like he'd known she was watching the entire time. She opened the door. "You fight like a soldier," she said. "I'm not a soldier." "Then what are you?" "Someone who doesn't die easy." He walked past her into the cabin, snow melting off his shoulders. "You should learn." "Learn what?" "How to fight back." He grabbed a towel and dried his face. "You've been running for 10 years. That's smart. But running only works until you can't run anymore. Then what?" "Then I die." "Or you could make them die instead." She laughed. Actually, laughed. "You think I can take on trained pack wolves?" "I think you can learn." He tossed the towel aside. "If you want to." Arya looked at him, at the scars on his knuckles, at the way he stood like gravity was optional, at the absolute certainty in his eyes that said he believed every word coming out of his mouth. "Why would you teach me?" "Because watching you flinch every time the wind blows is getting old." He moved to the center of the room. "Come here." She shouldn't. This was already too much trust, too much vulnerability, too much of everything she'd spent a decade avoiding, but her feet carried her forward anyway. "Hit me," Kael said. "What?" "Hit me. Hard as you can." Arya stared at him, then she swung, fast, all her weight behind it. He caught her fist an inch from his face, didn't even blink. Again, she tried. He blocked. She tried again. Blocked again, 5 times, 10, 20. Each time he stopped her strike before it connected, moving just enough to redirect her momentum without hurting her. Finally, she stepped back, breathing hard. "I can't touch you." "Not yet." He lowered his hands. "But you're not trying to touch me. You're trying to hurt me. There's a difference." "What difference?" "Intent." He moved closer. "When you throw a punch, you're thinking about what might happen if I catch it, if I hurt you back, if you fail. All that fear lives in your fist, and I can feel it coming before you even move." "So what am I supposed to do? Just stop being afraid?" "No. You use it." He tapped her chest, right over her heart. "Fear makes you fast, makes you creative, makes you want to survive so bad you'll do things you didn't think were possible. You just have to aim it at them instead of yourself." Arya looked down at where his finger had touched her. Her heart was pounding, not from exertion, from something else, something that felt like the first spark of heat after 10 years of ice. "Show me," she said. And he did. Okay. 2 weeks passed. Every morning, Kael took her outside and broke her down, showed her how to turn her size into an advantage, how to move inside a larger opponent's reach, how to make her body a weapon even without claws or fangs. He was brutal, efficient, and he never once let her give up. Every night they sat by the fire and talked. Small things at first. The weather, the mountains, stories about nothing important. But slowly, carefully, the walls started coming down. Arya told him about Millridge, about the boarding houses and fake names and never staying anywhere long enough to be remembered. Kael told her about the road, about fighting rings in border towns where desperate men bet their last coin on blood, about sleeping in barns and eating scraps and learning how to disappear when the law came looking. They didn't talk about the important things, the real things, the truths that would shatter whatever fragile peace they'd built. But they didn't need to, because somewhere between the fighting and the cooking and the long silences, Arya realized she wasn't afraid of him anymore. She was afraid of how much she wanted to stay. On the 15th night, Kael sat across from her at the table, cleaning his knife, and said, "The pass will be clear in 2 days." Arya's chest tightened. "Yeah, I know." "You've got 3 options." He didn't look up from the blade. "Keep running, find a pack strong enough to protect you, or stop hiding and face whatever's coming." "That's not really 3 options. That's one option dressed up 3 different ways." "Maybe." He set the knife down. "But you can't stay here forever." "Why not?" The question hung between them, heavier than it should be. Kael finally looked at her, really looked at her, and for just a second something cracked in that iron control. something raw and hungry and so carefully buried she almost missed it. Because, he said quietly, you deserve better than hiding in a cabin with someone like me. What if I don't want better? You should. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I've got. Arya stood, walked around the table, stood in front of him, close enough to see the flecks of darker gray in his eyes, close enough to smell snow and pine and something wilder underneath. You've been keeping me safe for 2 weeks, she said. Teaching me, feeding me, acting like you don't care, but I see how you watch the door every time the wind picks up. I see how you make sure I eat first. I see. You don't see anything. His voice dropped, rougher. You see what you want to see. Then tell me what I'm missing. He stood, slowly. They were inches apart now. She could feel heat radiating off him despite the cold, could feel how much control it took for him to stay still. I'm not one of the good ones, Kyle said. I'm not a hero. I'm not going to save you from the big bad world and ride off into the sunset. I'm the thing people run from. And if you had any sense at all, you'd already be gone. Maybe I don't want sense. She reached up and touched his jaw. He went absolutely still. Maybe I want this. You don't know what this is. So show me. For 3 heartbeats, neither of them moved. Then Kyle grabbed her wrist and pulled her hand away, gently but firmly. Go to bed, Arya. It was the first time he'd used her real name. She stepped back. Humiliation burned in her throat. Right, sorry. I misread, You didn't misread anything. His eyes were blazing now. But if I touch you, I won't stop. And you deserve someone who can. He turned and walked out the door into the freezing night. Arya stood there, hand still tingling where he'd gripped her wrist, heart hammering against her ribs. She'd spent 10 years running from monsters, and somehow she'd just fallen in love with one. The next morning, Kyle was gone. Arya searched the cabin, the clearing, the tree line. Nothing, just tracks in the snow leading down the mountain toward town. He'd left supplies. Food. A map with safe routes marked. And a note. The wolves that came for you are dead. You've got 2 days before anyone realizes they're missing. Use them. Stay off pack territories. Stay away from cities. And for the love of God, stop trusting strangers who save you in storms. K. No explanation. No goodbye. Just instructions and a warning wrapped in handwriting so precise it looked like violence. Arya crumpled the note in her fist. Of course he'd left. Of course he'd walked away the second she got too close. That's what dangerous men did. They kept you at arm's length and told themselves it was for your own good. She should be relieved. Should pack her things and disappear before whoever sent those wolves sent more. Should go back to being invisible and alone and safe. Instead, she grabbed her coat and went after him. She found him 3 miles down the mountain, standing in a clearing surrounded by bodies. 7 wolves, all dead. Throats torn out. Eyes still open in shock. Kale stood in the center of the carnage, blood on his hands, breathing hard. When he saw her, something flickered across his face. Not surprise. Resignation. I told you to leave, he said. Yeah, well, I'm bad at following orders. Arya walked closer, boots crunching on frozen blood. What is this? Clean up. They're all dead. That was the plan. You killed them. It wasn't a question. All of them, by yourself. Kyle wiped his hands on his pants. They were coming back for you. I made sure they wouldn't. How did you even find them? I tracked them 2 days ago, waited until they were separated from whatever pack sent them. Then I killed them. He said it like he was describing the weather. Problem solved. Arya stared at the bodies, at the brutality of it, at how efficiently he'd torn through 7 trained wolves without breaking a sweat. Who the hell are you? She whispered. I told you, nobody important. No, nobody important doesn't move like you do, doesn't fight like you do. She stepped closer. Nobody important doesn't have eyes that make grown men flinch. So I'll ask again. Who are you? Kale looked at her for a long moment. Then he smiled. Not friendly, not kind. The smile of a predator who'd just decided to show teeth. You really want to know? Yes. Then ask better questions. He walked past her, heading back up the mountain. And keep up. We've got company coming. What company? The kind that'll make 7 dead wolves look like mercy. Thunder rumbled in the distance. Not a storm. Something worse. Howls. Dozens of them. Rising from the valley like a wave of rage. And Kyle Mercer, whoever he really was, just kept walking, hands in his pockets, like the end of the world was chasing him and he couldn't be bothered to care. The howls grew louder as they climbed, echoing off the mountains like the voice of something ancient and furious waking up after a long sleep. Arya's lungs burned. Her legs screamed. But Kyle moved ahead of her with the same tireless rhythm he'd had since they started running, never slowing, never looking back. They reached the cabin just as the first wolves crested the ridge. Kale slammed the door and immediately started moving. Not panicking, methodical. He dragged the table against the wall, kicked the chairs aside, pulled up 2 loose floorboards to reveal a cache of weapons that made Arya's stomach drop. Knives, short swords, something that looked like it belonged in a war museum, all of them dark with old blood that hadn't quite washed clean. He tossed her a blade. She caught it on instinct. "How many?" she asked. 30? Maybe 40. He strapped a knife to each thigh with movements so practiced they looked automatic. Depends how pissed off their alpha is. That's a war party. Yeah. He finally looked at her. Still think you want answers? The howls were right outside now, circling, waiting for orders. Arya's hand tightened on the blade. Her heart was trying to punch through her ribcage, but her voice came out steady. "I think I'm about to get them, whether I want them or not." Something shifted in Kael's expression. Not quite a smile. More like recognition. Like he'd just watched her pass some test she didn't know she was taking. "Stay behind me," he said. "When they come through that door, they're going to come fast, and they're going to come angry. Don't hesitate, don't think. Just cut anything that gets close." "That's your entire strategy? Just cut them? You got a better one?" She didn't. The door exploded inward. 3 wolves poured through the opening, already mid-shift, skin tearing as muscle and bone rearranged itself into something that shouldn't exist. The first one lunged at Kyle. He sidestepped, brought his blade down, and opened its throat in one clean motion. Blood sprayed the walls. The wolf collapsed, gurgling. The second one went for Arya. She moved without thinking. The way Kyle had trained her, inside its reach, blade up. She felt the steel punch through fur and flesh and scrape against bone. The wolf howled and twisted, claws raking across her shoulder. Pain exploded white-hot, but she held on, twisted the knife, dragged it sideways. The wolf went down. Kale killed the third one before it made it 2 steps into the cabin. Then there was a moment of silence. Just breathing, just blood dripping onto wood. "You good?" Kyle asked. Arya looked down at the body at her feet, at the blood on her hands, at the way her entire body was shaking from adrenaline and shock, and the sudden understanding that she'd just killed something that used to be human. "No," she said, "but I'm alive." "Then you're good enough." More howls, closer now. Kale grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the back wall. He pressed something and a section of wood swung inward, revealing a tunnel carved into the mountain itself. "Go," he said. "What about you?" "I'll buy you time. There's a cave system 2 miles north. Follow the tunnel. Stay quiet. Don't stop until you're deep enough they can't smell you." "I'm not leaving you." "Yes, you are." He shoved her toward the opening. "Because if they catch you, everything I just did was for nothing." The front wall shattered. Wolves poured through like water through a broken dam. 5, 10, 15, too many to count. Kale turned to face them. No fear on his face. No hesitation. Just cold, brutal certainty. "Go!" he roared. Arya ran. Behind her, the cabin erupted into chaos. Snarling, screaming, the wet sound of flesh tearing and bones breaking. She wanted to look back, wanted to see if he was still standing, but her legs carried her forward into the darkness, deeper and deeper into the mountain, while the sounds of war faded behind her. The tunnel twisted and dropped. She ran until her lungs gave out, until her legs couldn't hold her anymore, until the only sound was her own ragged breathing echoing off stone walls. Then she stopped, slid down against the cold rock, and waited. She waited for hours, maybe longer. Time lost meaning in the dark. Finally, she heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming from the direction of the cabin. Arya pressed herself against the wall, knife ready, barely breathing. The footsteps stopped. "You can put the knife down." Kale's voice. But different somehow, colder, flatter, like all the warmth had been scraped out of it. He stepped into the dim light, covered in blood. So much blood it looked black in the darkness, but walking, breathing, alive. "You killed them," Arya whispered. "Most of them." He leaned against the tunnel wall. The rest ran when they realized what they were fighting. What were they fighting? He looked at her, and in the darkness his eyes reflected light that wasn't there. Silver and cold and absolutely inhuman. "Me," he said. They walked for 6 hours through the cave system. Neither of them spoke. Kyle led the way with the certainty of someone who'd walked these tunnels 100 times before. Arya followed, mind churning, trying to make sense of what she'd seen. 30 wolves. Maybe more. And he'd walked out of it without a scratch. That wasn't skill. That wasn't training. That was power. The kind of power that only came from bloodline, so old and strong they rewrote the rules. The kind of power that made regular wolves look like puppies pretending to be dangerous. Finally, the tunnel opened into a massive cavern, lit by phosphorescent moss growing across the ceiling. An underground river cut through the center, black water rushing over smooth stones. On the far side, someone had built a structure. Not a cabin, something bigger. Stone walls, heavy doors. The kind of place built to last centuries. "What is this?" Arya asked. "Safe house." Kale crossed the river by jumping from rock to rock, movements impossibly balanced. One of many. She followed, less gracefully. "You've got multiple safe houses carved into mountains? You don't survive by having one exit." Inside, the structure was sparse. A bed, a table, shelves lined with supplies, and maps. Dozens of maps covering the walls, marked with symbols and routes and territories that spread across half the continent. Arya walked closer. Her eyes traced the marks, recognized some of the names. Vale Territory, Blackwood Land, the Crescent Pass where her family used to run before the war. "Why do you have maps of every major pact territory in the north?" she asked quietly. Kale didn't answer. He was at the far wall, pulling weapons from another hidden cache, checking edges, testing balance, moving with the mechanical efficiency of someone preparing for war. "Kyle, we need to keep moving." He set 3 knives on the table. "That pack will report back. Whoever sent them will send more. Better trained, better armed. We've got maybe 12 hours before this place is compromised." "Answer the question." "No." "Why not?" "Because you're not ready for the answer." Arya walked up behind him, grabbed his shoulder, forced him to turn around. His muscles were like iron under her hand, coiled and ready to explode into violence at the slightest provocation. "I just killed someone," she said. "I just watched you massacre 30 wolves like it was nothing. I've been running for 10 years from people I don't understand, hiding from threats I can't name, and every single time I think I've got a handle on what's real and what's nightmare, the world proves me wrong. So yeah, I'm ready. Tell me who you are." Kael stared down at her. In the dim light, he looked different. Older. Harder. The careful mask he'd worn for the past 2 weeks had cracked, and what showed through underneath was so much colder it made her shiver. "You want the truth?" he asked. "Yes. The truth is, you should have kept running, should have never trusted me, should have died in that storm before I ever laid eyes on you." His voice dropped lower. "Because now you're tied to me, and everything that comes with that is going to burn your life to ash." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one you're getting." He turned away. Arya's hand shot out, grabbed his wrist. Her fingers barely fit halfway around it. "Don't walk away from me," she said. "Let go." No. They stood there, locked in place. She could feel his pulse under her fingers. Slow, controlled. The heartbeat of something that didn't know how to panic. "You said someone helped you 10 years ago," Arya said. "You said you've been paying that debt forward. What happened 10 years ago?" Kael's jaw tightened. "Someone decided I was worth saving instead of killing." "Who?" "Doesn't matter. They're dead." "How?" "Because they were stupid enough to care about someone like me." He pulled his wrist free, not roughly, but with enough force she couldn't hold on. Same thing that's going to happen to you if you don't start using your head. Maybe I don't want to use my head. Arya stepped closer. Maybe I'm tired of thinking, tired of running, tired of being alone. Being alone keeps you alive. No, being alone keeps you breathing. That's not the same thing. Something flickered in his eyes. Fast. There and gone. Like she'd hit something true and he'd slammed a door on it before it could bleed. Get some rest, he said. We move at dawn. He walked out of the structure across the cavern and disappeared into one of the side tunnels. Arya stood there in the empty stone room, surrounded by maps of territories she couldn't return to, holding a knife still sticky with blood that wasn't hers. And for the first time in 10 years, she wasn't thinking about survival. She was thinking about truth. Cham. She found him an hour later at the edge of the underground river, sitting on the stones with his forearms resting on his knees. The water rushed past, black and endless. He didn't look up when she approached. Can't sleep? He asked. Can't stop thinking. Dangerous habit. She sat down beside him, close enough their shoulders almost touched. Tell me about the person who saved you. Why? Because I want to understand what I'm dealing with. Kael was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, her name was Vera. She ran a pack on the eastern border. Small, barely 20 wolves, but strong, smart. She found me half dead in the snow after I'd escaped from somewhere I shouldn't have survived. Escaped from where? Doesn't matter. He picked up a stone and tossed it into the river. It disappeared without a sound. She took me in, fed me, taught me how to be human again, and when the people I'd escaped from came looking, she stood between me and them and told them to go to hell. What happened? They killed her entire pack, burned her territory to the ground, and salted the earth so nothing would grow. His voice was flat, empty. I was away trading for supplies. By the time I got back, there was nothing left but ash and bodies. Arya's chest tightened. I'm sorry. Don't be. She knew the risk. Told me herself before it happened. He looked at her finally. She said some people are worth dying for. That the world needed people who gave a damn, even when it was stupid, even when it got you killed. Do you believe that? No. He turned back to the water. I think the world eats people who give a damn and spits out their bones. I think caring is a weakness that gets exploited by everyone strong enough to recognize it. And I think Vera would still be alive if she'd just let me die in that snow. But you're still paying her debt forward. Yeah. Why? He didn't answer for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was so quiet she almost missed it under the rush of water. Because she's the only person who ever looked at me and didn't see a weapon. And maybe if I keep saving people who don't deserve to die, eventually it'll balance out what I am. Arya reached over and took his hand. His fingers were cold, rough, scarred across the knuckles from a lifetime of violence. He stared down at their joined hands like he'd never seen anything more confusing. You're not a weapon, she said. You don't know what I am. Then tell me. No. Kael, oh, my name's not Kael. The words came out hard. Final. Kael Mercer is what I call myself when I'm pretending to be someone smaller, someone forgettable, someone who can walk into towns and out again without leaving craters. Arya's heart kicked. Then what's your real name? He looked at her, and in his eyes she saw the truth before he spoke it. Lucien Draven. The name hit her like a fist to the chest. Lucien Draven, the Alpha King, the conqueror of the North, the monster who'd crushed 17 packs in 5 years and built an empire out of their bones. The ghost story mothers told their children to make them behave. The nightmare every independent pack feared would come knocking on their door. Arya jerked her hand back, scrambled to her feet. Her knife was in her hand before she even realized she'd drawn it. You're lying. No. He stood slowly, hands open, unthreatening. I'm not. Lucien Draven is dead. He disappeared 3 years ago. Everyone says, everyone's wrong. His voice was steady, calm. I walked away from the throne, gave it to someone who wanted it more than I did. And I've been moving ever since, trying to outrun what I built. The Empire's still there, still crushing packs, still taking territory. I know. And you just walked away? Just let it keep going? Yes. Why? His eyes locked on hers. Because I'm tired of being what they needed me to be. And I'd rather die alone in the snow than spend one more day sitting on a throne built out of people I killed. Arya's hand was shaking. The knife felt too heavy, too real. You're the reason my family's dead. Probably. Probably? Your family died in a territorial war 10 years ago. So did a lot of families. Some of them died because packs I'd conquered tried to fight back. Some died because other packs saw weakness and attacked. All of it happened because I broke the balance. He took a step closer. She raised the knife higher. He stopped. So yeah, I'm the reason. Not directly, but close enough. You should have told me. When? When I pulled you out of the storm? When I was teaching you how to fight? When you looked at me like I was someone worth saving? His voice cracked, just barely. I've been trying to tell you since the first night. Every time you looked at me like I was a good man, it felt like swallowing glass. But I couldn't, because for the first time in 15 years, someone saw me and didn't flinch. I'm flinching now. Yeah. He looked away. You are. They stood there in the darkness, river rushing between them, the weight of his confession crushing the air out of the space. Finally, Arya lowered the knife. I should kill you, she said. You should. I should walk out of here and never look back. Yeah. But those wolves that attacked me, the pack hunting me. Her voice shook. They're connected to your empire, aren't they? Lucien nodded. The territory you've been running through is controlled by my former generals. Some of them are still loyal. Some are trying to carve out their own kingdoms. All of them want leverage against me. And I'm leverage. You're a Vale, last of your bloodline. That makes you valuable to anyone trying to claim legitimacy or build alliances. He met her eyes, which means every day you're alive and unclaimed, you're a target. So this whole time you've been protecting me because I'm useful. No. The word came out sharp. I've been protecting you because letting you die would make me exactly what I'm trying not to be anymore. Arya laughed. It came out bitter. That's not better. I know. She turned away, stared into the black water. Her reflection looked back, distorted and wrong. Everything she thought she knew had just collapsed. The man who'd saved her was the monster who'd destroyed her world. The gentle hands that taught her to fight had crushed territories and broken bloodlines. The eyes that looked at her like she mattered belonged to a king who'd walked away from his throne and let chaos eat everything he'd built. Why me? She asked quietly. Why save me specifically? There are dozens of displaced wolves out there, hundreds. Why did I matter? Lucien was silent for a long moment. Then he said, because you reminded me of Vera. How? The way you didn't give up, didn't bow, kept running even when running should have killed you. He moved closer. She could feel heat radiating off him despite the cold. Most people break when the world pushes them. They fold, submit, disappear. But you didn't. You survived. And survival like that is rare enough. I wanted to see what would happen if someone gave you a reason to do more than just survive. So I was an experiment. No, you were a reminder that not everyone I touch turns to ash. She turned to face him. He was closer than she expected, close enough she could see the scars on his jaw. The way his eyes tracked her movements, like he was waiting for her to run or attack or do anything except stand there looking at him like he'd just torn her world in half. I don't know what to do with this, she said. Neither do I. I should hate you. You should. But I don't. The confession tasted like poison. And I don't know if that makes me weak or stupid or just broken. It makes you human. You're not. No. He smiled. It wasn't kind. I'm not. Arya reached up and touched his face. His skin was warm under her palm, real, solid. Not a ghost story or a nightmare or a king, just a man who'd made terrible choices and was trying to live with them. What happens now? She asked. Now you decide if I'm worth the risk. And if I decide you're not, then I'll take you somewhere safe, set you up with resources, and you'll never see me again. His hand came up to cover hers. His grip was gentle. But if you decide I am, then you need to understand what that means. It means running, fighting, never settling down, never being safe. Because the people who want to use you will keep coming, and the people who want to kill me will use you to do it. That's a terrible sales pitch. It's the truth. She stood there with her hand on his face, his hand covering hers, the weight of impossible choices pressing down on her chest. 10 years. 10 years of running and hiding and being alone. 10 years of sleeping with one eye open and trusting no one and building walls so high nothing could get through. And this man had walked through them like they were paper. I want to hate you, she said again. I know. I want to walk away and never think about you again. I know, but I can't. The words came out broken. Because you're the first person in 10 years who made me feel like I was more than just something to survive. And I don't know what to do with that. Lucien pulled her hand away from his face, held it between both of his, looked at her with eyes that had seen empires rise and fall, and understood exactly how much she was giving him. You don't have to decide tonight, he said. When do I have to decide? When the next pack shows up. He let go of her hand. Because they will show up. And when they do, you'll either trust me to keep you alive, or you'll take your chances alone. How long do we have? Hours, maybe less. She closed her eyes, breathed in the cold cave air, felt the knife still in her hand and the impossible weight of everything she'd just learned. When she opened her eyes again, Lucien was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. Teach me, she said. Teach you what? How to fight like you do. How to kill like you do. How to be something more than just a survivor. Her voice steadied. Because if I'm going to be a target anyway, I'd rather be a target that bites back. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite approval. More like recognition. Like she'd just proven something he'd been hoping was true. You don't know what you're asking for. Then show me. He studied her for another long moment. Then he nodded once. Sharp. Final. All right, Lucien said. But don't blame me when you realize the person you become is someone you don't recognize. I stopped recognizing myself 10 years ago. Arya lifted her chin. This is just the next version. Faults. They trained through the night. Not like before. Not the careful, measured lessons designed to keep her safe. This was brutal. Vicious. He came at her with full force, pulling strikes at the last second but not slowing down. Making her move. Making her react. Making her understand that hesitation was death. She hit the ground 6 times in the first hour. Each time he waited for her to get up. Each time she did. By the 3rd hour, she was bleeding from a split lip, and her ribs were screaming. But she was landing hits, not many, not clean, but enough that he had to work for it. Better, Lucien said after she'd managed to slip inside his guard and drive her elbow into his stomach. But you're still thinking too much. I'm thinking exactly the right amount. No. You're calculating, weighing options, trying to find the perfect opening. He circled her slowly. There is no perfect opening. There's just the one you take and the one that kills you. Stop looking for perfection and start looking for opportunity. She lunged. He sidestepped. Her momentum carried her forward. He could have dropped her. Instead, he caught her shoulder and shoved her back upright. Again. They went until her muscles gave out. Until she couldn't lift her arms anymore. Until the only thing keeping her upright was stubbornness and the growing understanding that this was what survival really looked like. Not running, not hiding, fighting with everything you had until nothing was left. Finally, Lucien called a stop. Enough, he said. You're going to hurt yourself if we keep going. Arya collapsed against the stone wall, chest heaving. Sweat dripped into her eyes. Every part of her body hurt. How do you do this? She gasped. How do you keep moving when everything screams at you to stop? Practice. And knowing that stopping means dying. He handed her a water skin. You did good. I barely touched you. 2 weeks ago, you couldn't touch me at all. Now you can. He sat down beside her. That's progress. She drank. The water was cold and tasted like minerals. It helped. When they come for us, she said, what's the plan? Kill them before they kill us. That's it? That's your whole strategy. It's worked so far. You're insane. Probably. He leaned his head back against the stone. But insanity's kept me alive longer than sanity ever did. They sat in silence, breathing, recovering, existing in the space between one fight and the next. Lucien, Arya said quietly, Yeah. When this is over, when we've dealt with whoever's coming, what then? He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was careful, measured. Then you decide if you want to keep doing this, and I'll respect whatever you choose. And if I choose to stay, then we keep running, keep fighting, keep surviving until we can't anymore. That's not a future. No. He looked at her. It's not, but it's better than the alternative. She wanted to argue, wanted to demand something more than just endless motion and violence. But the truth was, she didn't know what more looked like anymore. Hadn't known for 10 years. Okay, she said. Okay, what? Okay. I'll keep doing this. With you. She met his eyes. But if you lie to me again, I'll kill you myself. A smile touched his mouth. Real this time. Fair enough. What que? They came at dawn. Arya woke to Lucian's hand over her mouth and his voice in her ear, low and urgent. Don't move. Don't make a sound. She nodded. He lifted his hand. Outside she could hear them, footsteps on stone, lots of them, spreading out across the cavern with military precision. Lucien moved to the wall and pressed his ear against it, listening, counting. Finally, he looked back at her and held up both hands. 10 fingers. Then again, 20. 20 wolves, trained, organized, and they'd found the safe house. Arya's pulse kicked into overdrive. 20 was too many, even for him. Even with everything he could do, 20 coordinated fighters was a death sentence. Lucien pulled weapons from the cache, passed her 2 knives and a short blade. Then he did something she didn't expect. He smiled. Not nervous. Not worried. The smile of someone who'd just been handed exactly what he wanted. What? She whispered. They brought 20 wolves to kill 2 people. His eyes gleamed in the dim light. They're scared. That doesn't help us. Yeah, it does. Scared people make mistakes, and mistakes are how you win fights you shouldn't survive. He moved to the door, put his hand on the latch. When I open this, he said quietly, it's going to get loud. Stay close. Watch my back. And remember what I taught you. Don't think, just move. Exactly. He looked back at her one more time, and in that look she saw everything he wasn't saying. The apology. The gratitude. The terrible certainty that this might be the last moment they had before everything went to hell. Then he opened the door and stepped into the light. The wolves were waiting. 20 wolves stood in formation across the cavern floor, and for 3 seconds, nobody moved. They just stared at Lucien like they were looking at a ghost that had crawled out of its grave to remind them why they'd been afraid in the first place. Then the first one shifted. Lucien moved before the transformation completed. He crossed 15 feet of stone in 2 strides and drove his blade through the wolf's chest before claws fully formed. The body hit the ground. Blood spread across wet rock. The others broke formation and charged. Arya stayed close like he'd told her, but close meant being in the center of a hurricane. Lucien fought like physics didn't apply to him, moving through bodies with surgical precision. Every strike landed exactly where it needed to. Every step took him somewhere the wolves couldn't follow fast enough. He wasn't just fighting. He was conducting a massacre with the calm efficiency of someone checking items off a list. A wolf came at Arya from the side. She spun, blade up, and caught it across the throat. Not deep enough to kill, deep enough to make it stumble. Lucien finished it with a strike that took its head halfway off. He didn't look at her, didn't slow down, just kept moving like she was part of the machinery now, another component in the killing engine he'd become. 6 wolves down in the first minute, then 8, then 12. The remaining ones started backing up, not retreating, regrouping. Their eyes tracked Lucien with the kind of calculation that meant orders and planning and something worse than just blind aggression. One of them shifted back to human form. Male, maybe 30. Scars across his chest that looked military. He raised his hand and the others stopped moving. Lucien stopped too, 10 feet of blood-slicked stone between them. The man studied him with eyes that held recognition and something close to respect. Lucien Draven, he said. His voice echoed off the cavern walls. The stories don't do you justice. They never do. Lucien's blade dripped red onto the floor. You here to arrest me or just waste my time? Neither. I'm here to bring you home. Don't have a home. The Empire disagrees. The man took a step forward. His wolves stayed back, still in formation, professional, disciplined, not rogues, soldiers. Your generals are tearing each other apart, fighting over the territories you abandoned. The northern packs are rebelling. 3 cities burned last month. The whole structure is collapsing. Good. Let it collapse. You built it. You're responsible for it. I walked away. That makes it not my problem anymore. The man's expression hardened. You don't get to just walk away from an empire. The blood you spilled to build it doesn't wash off because you got tired of wearing a crown. Lucian laughed, cold and bitter. You came all this way to lecture me about responsibility? You should have brought more men. I brought enough. The man gestured and the remaining wolves spread out wider, encircling both Lucian and Arya. And I'm not here to lecture. I'm here to deliver a message from someone you actually give a damn about. Something shifted in Lucian's posture. Not much, just enough that Arya felt it. Who? He asked quietly. Theron Cade. The name hit the cavern like a stone dropped into still water. Arya saw Lucian go absolutely still. Not tense. Still. The kind of stillness that came right before something snapped. Theron's dead, Lucian said. No. He's alive. And he's been holding your empire together with duct tape and threats, while you've been playing vagrant in the mountains. The man pulled a sealed letter from his jacket, tossed it across the space between them. It landed at Lucien's feet. He wants you to read that. Then he wants you to come home. Lucien stared down at the letter like it was a viper coiled on the stone. Arya moved closer, close enough to feel the tension radiating off him in waves. Who's Theron? She whispered. Someone I thought I'd never see again. Lucien bent and picked up the letter. The seal was unbroken, some kind of symbol pressed into black wax. He didn't open it, just held it between his fingers like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Someone who should have let me stay dead. The lead wolf waited. Patient. His men held their positions, not attacking, not moving, just watching with the discipline of soldiers who knew how to follow orders, even when those orders meant standing in a room with the most dangerous thing any of them had ever faced. Finally, Lucien broke the seal. The letter was short. Arya couldn't see what it said, but she watched Lucien's face as he read, watched the way his jaw tightened, the way his breathing changed, the way something behind his eyes shifted from cold distance into something raw and infinitely more dangerous. He folded the letter, put it in his pocket. Tell Theron I said no, he said. He knew you'd say that. The man nodded to his wolves. They didn't attack. They stepped aside, opening a path to one of the side tunnels. Which is why he sent me to show you what happens if you don't come home. Show me what? Not what. Who? 3 more figures emerged from the tunnel. Not wolves. Prisoners. Chained and gagged and barely able to walk. The guards shoved them forward into the dim light. Arya's breath caught. They were young, teenagers. 2 girls and a boy. Their clothes were torn and filthy, faces bruised, eyes wide with terror that went beyond physical pain. These weren't just prisoners. These were hostages who'd been broken slowly and deliberately. The lead wolf walked over to them, grabbed the boy by the hair, and forced his head back, exposing his throat. Recognize them? He asked Lucien. Lucien's face had gone blank. Absolutely blank. But his hands were shaking, just slightly. The kind of tremor that meant restraint was costing him everything he had. Where did you find them? His voice was flat. Dead. In the eastern settlements. They've been hiding in Vale territory under false names. Took us 6 months to track them down. The man pulled the boy closer to the edge of the underground river. The water rushed past, black and hungry. Theron wants you to know he can find everyone you care about, everyone you've tried to protect by walking away. And if you don't come home, he'll kill them one by one until you do. Let them go. Can't do that. Let them go or I'll kill every single one of you and swim through your blood to get to Theron myself. The man smiled. Not cruel. Sad. Like he was watching something inevitable and tragic unfold. See, that's the problem, he said. You think you still have leverage. You think being the monster everyone fears means you get to make demands. He drew a knife, pressed it to the boy's throat. But you walked away, Lucien. You gave up the throne. You gave up the power, and now you're just a ghost trying to pretend the past doesn't own you. I'm warning you, Atum. I know, but my orders are clear. You come back willingly, these kids live. You refuse, I kill one right now. Then I kill another in 3 days. Then the last one a week after that. And Theron keeps finding more until you realize that running doesn't protect anyone. It just spreads the damage. Lucian took a step forward. The wolves moved with him, weapons raised, ready to die if necessary, but committed to their orders. You don't want to do this, Lucien said quietly. You're right, I don't. But I will. Because my family's in one of those cities that burned last month. My daughter died choking on smoke because your generals couldn't stop fighting long enough to give a damn about civilians. The man's voice cracked. So yeah, I'll kill these kids. I'll kill 100 more if that's what it takes to make you face what you created. Arya's hand was on her knife. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She looked at Lucien, waiting for orders, waiting for some sign of what they were supposed to do. But Lucien wasn't looking at her. He was looking at the 3 prisoners with an expression that made her chest hurt. Not anger, not calculation, grief, raw and bottomless and absolutely devastating. How long, he asked. How long for what? How long do I have to decide? The man checked his watch. Theron said you get until sunrise tomorrow. After that, the boy dies. 3 days later, one of the girls. You keep running, we keep killing. Simple as that. He shoved the prisoners back toward the guards. They dragged them into the tunnel and disappeared. The remaining wolves backed toward the exit, weapons still raised, keeping Lucien and Arya covered. The lead wolf was the last to leave. He paused at the tunnel entrance. For what it's worth, he said, I hope you come back. The Empire needs you, whether you believe that or not. He looked at Arya. And you should leave him, tonight, before you're just another name on Theron's list. Then they were gone. Footsteps fading. Silence rushing back in like water filling a grave. Lucien stood in the center of the blood-soaked cavern, surrounded by bodies, holding himself so tightly controlled he looked like he might shatter. Arya walked up beside him, put her hand on his arm. His muscles were like stone. Who are those kids? She asked quietly. Orphans from the war. I've been supporting them with money I stole from the Empire's treasury before I left. Gave them new identities. Set them up in territories I thought were safe. His voice was hollow. I thought if I left, Theron would let them go. Would understand that I was done. That dragging me back would just make things worse. Who's Theron? My second in command. My friend. The only person I trusted with the truth about where I was going and why. He pulled out the letter, stared at it like it contained the secrets of the universe. Apparently, I was wrong. Arya took the letter from his hands, read it. The handwriting was clean, precise. The words even more so. Lucien. You broke something that can't be fixed by absence. Come home or watch everyone you ever tried to save die screaming. You've got 1 day. Don't waste it running. We both know how this ends. T. She handed it back. What are you going to do? I don't know. You have to know. You've got until sunrise. I know what I have. He turned to look at her finally. His eyes were empty. What I don't know is whether going back makes it better or just gives Theron exactly what he wants. Which is? Me. On a leash. Doing what I'm told because he's holding everyone I care about hostage. Lucien walked to the edge of the river, stared down into the black water. The moment I step foot in that empire, I'm his. And everything I walked away from comes back like it never left. So you're just going to let those kids die? No. The word came out hard. But I don't know how to save them without destroying everything I've been trying to become. Arya walked up beside him, stood close enough their shoulders touched. Then become something else, she said. Become whatever you need to be to keep them alive. You don't understand. If I go back, I'm not just Lucien Draven anymore. I'm the Alpha King, and that version of me doesn't negotiate, doesn't compromise, doesn't stop until everything that threatened him is dead and buried. He looked at her. Including Theron. Good. He blinked. Good? He threatened children, threatened me, threatened you. He deserves whatever's coming. She held his gaze. And if you're too afraid to be the monster he thinks you are, then I'll do it myself. Something flickered in Lucien's eyes. Surprise. Then something darker. Something that looked like relief mixed with horror. You don't know what you're saying. Yes, I do. You taught me. Fight back. Don't think, just move. She touched his face, forcing him to look at her. So move. Go back to your empire. Tear it apart from the inside. Kill everyone who betrayed you, and save those kids before Theron uses them to turn you into his weapon. Lucian stared at her for a long moment. Then he started laughing. Not humor, the sound of something breaking under too much pressure. You're insane, he said. Learned from the best. He pulled her against him, held her so tight she could barely breathe. His heart pounded against her chest, wild and fast and completely at odds with the control he usually wore like armor. If we do this, he said into her hair, there's no coming back. You understand that? No more running, no more hiding. We walk into that empire and we either burn it to the ground or we die trying. I understand. And you're still willing? I've been running for 10 years. She pulled back enough to look at him. I'm tired of running. Let's see what happens when we turn around and bite. Lucien kissed her, hard, desperate, like he was trying to memorize the shape of her mouth before everything went to hell. When he pulled away, his eyes had changed. No more grief, no more hesitation, just cold, calculated fury. All right, he said, let's go home. They traveled fast. Lucian knew routes through the mountains that didn't exist on any map, paths carved by wolves older than memory and hidden from anyone without the bloodline to see them. They moved through darkness and snow, stopping only when absolutely necessary, pushing themselves harder than human bodies should endure. Arya's lungs burned. Her legs screamed, but she kept moving, because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant realizing exactly how insane this plan was. On the second night, they made camp in a hollow carved into a cliff face. No fire, no light, just cold stone and darkness and the sound of wind howling across the mountains. Lucian sat at the edge of the hollow, staring out at the valley below. His profile was sharp against the stars, hard, ancient, the face of someone who'd seen civilizations rise and fall and understood exactly how fragile everything was. Tell me about Theron, Arya said. Lucian didn't look at her. What do you want to know? How you met, why you trusted him, why he's doing this. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, we grew up together. 2 orphans in a pack that didn't want us. We survived by being smarter, faster, meaner than everyone else. And when I started building the empire, he was the only one who understood why. He picked up a stone and tossed it into the darkness. He believed in what we were creating, believed that strength was the only thing that kept wolves from tearing each other apart, that fear was better than chaos. What changed? I did. I started seeing what we'd built, seeing the bodies, the broken packs, the territories we'd crushed because they wouldn't submit. His voice got quieter, and I realized we'd become exactly what we'd been running from. Just another set of monsters ruling through violence and calling it order. Did you tell him that? I tried. He said I'd gone soft. Said the Empire needed me to be strong, not sentimental. The doubting what we'd done would make everything we'd sacrificed meaningless. Lucian finally looked at her. So I left. Walked away without telling him where I was going. Thought he'd let me go. Thought he'd understand that I couldn't be what he needed anymore. But he didn't. No. He decided I was just broken, and that if he couldn't fix me, he'd drag me back and make me be the king again whether I wanted to or not. His jaw tightened. The thing about Theron is, he never learned how to let go of anything, ever. He holds on until his hands bleed, and then he holds on harder. Arya moved closer, sat beside him with their backs against cold stone. So we're walking into a trap, she said. Yeah. And you think you can beat him? I don't know. Theron knows how I fight, knows how I think. He's been preparing for this moment since the day I left. Lucian looked at her. But he doesn't know about you. What does that mean? It means he's expecting me to come back alone, broken, ready to submit because I've got no other options. A cold smile touched his mouth. He's not expecting me to bring someone who makes me want to burn everything down just to keep her safe. Arya's chest tightened. That's a lot of pressure. Can you handle it? I killed wolves 2 weeks ago. I'll figure it out. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got. They sat in silence. Somewhere below, a wolf howled. The sound echoed across the valley, lonely and ancient and infinitely sad. Arya, Lucian said quietly. Yeah. If this goes wrong, if Theron gets the upper hand, I need you to run. No, this isn't negotiable. Neither is this. We go in together, we fight together, we leave together, or not at all. She grabbed his hand, squeezed it hard. I didn't follow you into hell just to abandon you at the door. He stared at their joined hands, then he brought hers to his mouth and kissed her knuckles. Gentle, reverent, completely at odds with everything else about him. You're going to get yourself killed, he said. Probably, but I'll die doing something that matters instead of just running from shadows. That's not comforting. Wasn't meant to be. Was meant to be true. He laughed quietly. You sound like me. Learned from the best. They stayed like that until dawn broke across the mountains, turning the snow pink and gold and beautiful. The last morning before everything changed, before the man who'd walked away from an empire walked back into it with murder in his eyes and a woman beside him who refused to let him fall alone. But Tuz, the capital fortress rose from the northern waste like something carved by gods who hated beauty. Black stone, sharp edges, towers that disappeared into low clouds. It didn't look like a palace. It looked like a monument to domination, built to remind everyone who saw it exactly what happened to those who challenged the empire. They approached at midday. No hiding, no subterfuge. Lucian walked straight up the main road with Arya beside him, and within minutes wolves appeared on the walls. Then more. Then dozens. All of them staring down at the ghost who'd just walked back from the dead. Guards met them at the gate. 20, 30, heavily armed. Their captain stepped forward, hand on his sword, eyes wide with disbelief. Lord Draven, he stammered. We didn't expect... I know. Lucian's voice carried across the courtyard. Where's Theron? The throne room, my lord. He said you'd come. He's been waiting. Good. Take me to him. The captain hesitated. His eyes flicked to Arya. And the woman? Comes with me. Anyone tries to stop her, I'll kill them myself. The guards exchanged glances. Then they stepped aside. They walked through corridors that smelled like old stone and violence. Wolves lined the halls, watching with expressions that ranged from shock to fear to something that might have been hope. Word spread fast. By the time they reached the throne room doors, half the fortress knew Lucien Draven had returned. The doors opened. The throne room was massive, vaulted ceilings, pillars carved with the names of conquered packs. And at the far end, sitting on a throne that had been empty for 3 years, was Theron Cade. He looked older, harder. Gray touched his temples and new scars marked his face, but his eyes were the same, sharp, calculating. The eyes of someone who'd been holding an empire together through sheer willpower and terror. He stood as they approached, slowly, like his body hurt. Lucien, he said. His voice echoed through the vast space. You're late. I had to think about whether killing you was worth the trip. And? Still deciding. Theron smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. You look different, softer. Guess living like a vagrant does that. Guess running your empire does that. Lucien nodded at the scars. You look like hell. Funny. I was about to say the same thing. Theron walked down the steps from the throne. His gait was stiff, careful, like something inside him had broken and healed wrong. 3 years, Lucien. 3 years I've been holding this together, stopping your generals from tearing each other apart, keeping the territories in line, dealing with rebellions and assassinations and pacts who think they can carve out their own kingdoms now that you're gone. He stopped 10 feet away. And you just walked away, left me to clean up your mess. I didn't leave you anything. I left the empire. There's a difference. No, there's not. Because you built this. You conquered these territories. You made these wolves bow. And then you decided you didn't like what you'd created and abandoned it like it was someone else's problem. Theron's voice hardened. But it's your problem, Lucien. It always was. And running doesn't change that. Arya watched them. Watched the way they circled each other without moving. Watched the weight of history and betrayal hanging between them like a live wire. Where are the kids? Lucien asked. Safe, for now. I want to see them. You will. After we talk. We're talking now.
No, you're stalling. I know you, Lucian. You're looking for an opening, trying to figure out how to kill me and get those kids out without the entire fortress coming down on you. Theron's smile widened. It won't work. I've got 100 wolves loyal to me, another 300 who'll follow orders because they're too afraid not to. You're fast, you're brutal, but you're not fast enough to kill them all. Want to bet?
I'd rather not find out. Theron gestured and doors opened along the sides of the throne room. Wolves poured in, dozens of them, all armed, all positioned to cut off every exit. See? I knew you'd come back angry, knew you'd want blood, so I made sure that getting it would cost you everything. Lucian's hands clenched. Arya could feel violence radiating off him in waves, barely contained, looking for something to break against. What do you want, Theron?
I want you to stay. I want you to take back the throne. I want you to be the king this empire needs instead of the coward you've been pretending to be. Theron took another step closer. And I want you to admit that walking away was the biggest mistake you ever made. And if I refuse?
Then I kill one of those kids, right now, in front of you, and I keep killing them until you realize that you don't get to choose anymore. His voice dropped. You're the Alpha King, Lucian. That doesn't just go away because you don't like it. It's who you are, what you were always meant to be, and the sooner you accept that, the sooner everyone stops suffering. Arya's hand drifted to her knife. The room was too full. Too many bodies between them and the doors, but if it came down to fighting, she'd take as many with her as she could before they went down. Lucian was absolutely still. His breathing had slowed. His expression had gone blank, the calm before something catastrophic. You threatened children, he said quietly. I did what I had to do. You threatened her. He nodded at Arya. I gave her the chance to leave. She chose to stay. That makes her part of this. No, that makes her mine. And threatening what's mine means you've forgotten what happens to people who make that mistake. Theron's smile faded. Are you threatening me? I'm promising you. Let those kids go. Let her leave, and I'll stay. I'll be your king. I'll do whatever you want. But if you hurt any of them, I'll tear this empire apart brick by brick and bury you under the rubble. You don't have the leverage to make demands. Don't I? Lucien raised his hand, snapped his fingers once, sharp, commanding. Every wolf in the room flinched, not because of the sound, because of what it meant. That gesture was burned into the collective memory of every soldier who'd served under Lucien Draven. The signal that meant orders were about to be given and disobedience meant death. Theron's expression flickered, just for a second, uncertainty bleeding through. They don't serve you anymore, he said. They serve me. Do they? Lucien looked around the room, met the eyes of wolves who'd frozen mid-step. Any of you remember the Northern Campaign, the siege at Blackwater? The night I held off 300 rebels with 50 soldiers, and not one of you died? His voice carried to every corner. I kept you alive, kept your families fed, gave you an empire where wolves could live without fear of being hunted, and Theron wants you to believe I abandoned you. But ask yourselves this, who walked away because he was tired of sending you to die? And who's been sending you to die for 3 years while I've been gone? Silence. The wolves looked at each other, at Theron, at Lucien. Theron's face went red. Don't listen to him. He's manipulating you. Am I? Or am I just reminding them who bled for this empire and who just sat on a throne giving orders? Lucien took a step forward. The wolves between them parted. Not much, just enough. You want me back, Theron? Fine, I'll come back, but on my terms, not yours. You don't have terms. Then I'll make some. Lucien moved. Fast. Impossibly fast. He crossed the space between them in 3 strides and had Theron by the throat before anyone could react. The guard surged forward. Lucien's other hand came up, blade pressed to Theron's temple. Stop, he said. His voice was ice. Or I paint the floor with his brains. The wolves froze. Theron's eyes were wide. Not with fear, with rage, with betrayal, with the sudden understanding that he'd miscalculated catastrophically. You can't win this, he gasped. Kill me and they'll tear you apart. Maybe, but you'll still be dead, and I'll have the satisfaction of knowing I took you with me.
Lucian's grip tightened. Now, you're going to tell your men to bring those kids here, unharmed, and then you're going to let us walk out of here. Or I'm going to show everyone in this room why I was the Alpha King and you were just the man who kept my chair warm. You're bluffing. Am I?
The blade pressed harder. Blood trickled down Theron's temple. The throne room held its breath. Finally, Theron raised his hand. The signal to stand down. "Bring the prisoners," he said. A guard disappeared through a side door. Moments later, he returned with the 3 kids. Still chained, still terrified, but alive. Lucian pulled Theron closer, spoke directly into his ear, voice so low only Theron could hear. But Arya saw his face go pale, saw something like genuine fear flash through his eyes. Then Lucian shoved him away, hard enough that Theron stumbled and fell. "Let's go," Lucian said to Arya. She grabbed the kids, started pulling them toward the door. The wolves watched, but didn't move, caught between orders and instinct, and the sudden understanding that the power structure they'd relied on had just shattered. They were halfway across the throne room when Theron started laughing. "You think you've won?" he called. "You think walking away again solves anything?" Lucian stopped, didn't turn around. "The rebellions are getting worse," Theron continued. "The territories are fracturing. 3 more cities will burn before winter, and everyone out there knows that Lucian Draven came home for one day and then ran away again. How long before they decide you're not worth fearing anymore?" "Not my problem. It's always your problem, because you built this. And no matter how far you run, you can't outrun what you created." Theron stood. Blood dripped down his face. "So go ahead. Take your orphans and your woman and disappear into the mountains. But when the Empire finally collapses and thousands die in the chaos, remember that you chose this. Remember that you had the power to stop it, and you walked away. Again." Lucian turned, looked back at Theron with eyes that held something worse than anger. Acceptance. The terrible understanding that Theron was right, and there was no escaping it. "You want me to fix your empire?" he asked quietly. "I want you to fix ours. Then here's how it happens. I'm taking these kids somewhere safe, somewhere you'll never find, and then I'm coming back, not as your king, as something worse." He smiled. It was the coldest thing Arya had ever seen. "I'm going to tear down everything you've built in my name. I'm going to find every general who's been carving out territories and burning cities, and I'm going to kill them, all of them, until the only thing left of the Empire is rubble and memory. That's not fixing it, that's destroying it." "Yeah, it is. Because the only way to fix something this broken is to burn it down and start over." Lucian's voice carried to every corner of the throne room. "So you got what you wanted, Theron? I'm coming home. But by the time I'm done, you're going to wish I'd stayed away." He walked out. Arya followed, pulling the kids with her, heart pounding, waiting for Theron to give the order to attack. But it never came. The wolves just watched them leave, silent, stunned, uncertain what came next now that the man who'd built their world had just promised to unmake it. They made it to the courtyard before the screaming started. The screaming came from inside the fortress, high and sharp and full of the kind of terror that meant someone was dying badly. Arya spun around, still gripping one of the kids by the arm, and saw smoke beginning to pour from the upper windows. Lucian stopped walking, his head tilted slightly, listening to something beyond human hearing. "What's happening?" Arya asked. "Civil war." His voice was flat. "Theron's losing control. We need to move." "No. We need to wait." "Wait for what?" "For them to tear each other apart enough that leaving becomes possible." More screams, the sound of steel on steel, then a howl that turned into a wet gurgle halfway through. The 3 kids pressed closer to Arya. The boy was maybe 15, both girls younger. Their eyes held the kind of emptiness that came from seeing too much horror too young. She recognized that look. Wore it herself for years. "It's okay," she told them quietly. "We're getting you out." The boy stared at her with eyes too old for his face. "He's going to kill them all, isn't he?" "Who?" "The Alpha King. That's who he really is. I heard the soldiers talking." The boy's voice shook. "They said he once killed 60 wolves in one night because they questioned his orders. They said he's the reason half the territories in the north are graveyards." Arya looked at Lucian. He stood 20 feet away, back to them, watching the fortress burn. From this angle, Backlit by smoke and fire, he looked exactly like the monster everyone said he was. Tall, immovable. The kind of presence that bent reality around itself through pure force of will. "He's not going to hurt you," she said. "How do you know?" "Because he's spent 3 years trying not to be what they made him, and if he fails now, it'll destroy him." She squeezed the boy's shoulder. "So yeah, I know." An explosion rocked the fortress. One of the towers collapsed inward, sending chunks of stone the size of horses crashing into the courtyard. Wolves poured out of the gates, some running, some fighting, all of them caught in the chaos of an empire eating itself alive. Lucien turned and walked back to them. His expression was unreadable. "There's a safe house 3 miles east. Follow the river until you hit the old mill. There's a door in the foundation. Code is 4729. He pulled a pouch from his belt and pressed it into Arya's hands. Heavy, coin, a lot of it. "That'll get you to the coast. From there find passage south. Somewhere the Empire's reach doesn't matter." Arya stared at him. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about you leaving, now, while there's still a chance. We're leaving together, that was the plan. Plans change." He looked back at the burning fortress. "Theron was right. I built this. And walking away 3 years ago didn't fix anything. Just made it worse, slower, but worse. So what are you going to do?" "What I should have done before I ran. End it properly." He met her eyes. "All of it. The generals, the territories, the whole rotten structure. I'm going to burn it down until there's nothing left to fight over." "That's suicide." "Probably." "Lucien, don't." His voice went hard. "Don't try to talk me out of this. You know I'm right. You've known since we walked in here. I know you're an idiot if you think I'm letting you do this alone. You don't have a choice. Watch me." She turned to the kids. "Run. Follow the river east. Find the safe house. Wait there. If we're not back in 3 days, use the coin to get as far from here as possible." "But," the boys started. "Go. Now." They ran. Disappeared into the smoke and chaos, 3 small figures swallowed by the madness unfolding around them. Arya turned back to Lucien. His jaw was tight, his hands clenched. "You should have gone with them," he said. "Should have. Didn't. Deal with it." She pulled her knives, checked the edges. "Now what's the actual plan? Besides the dramatic speech about burning empires?" He stared at her. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite approval. More like recognition mixed with resignation. The look of someone who just accepted that arguing was pointless. "The generals are inside, 5 of them. They've been carving up territories while Theron held the capital. They'll use this chaos to make their moves." He drew his own blades. "We kill them before they can organize. Cut the head off the snake 5 times. Then we deal with Theron." "How do we find them?" "They'll come to us. Once they realize I'm here, they'll have to. Because letting me live means their power's illegitimate. And illegitimate power doesn't last long in an empire built on fear." "You're using yourself as bait. I'm using myself as a reckoning." The fortress gates exploded outward. Wolves poured into the courtyard, some in uniform, some half-shifted, all of them looking for enemies or exits or any way to survive what was rapidly becoming a massacre. In the center of the chaos, a figure emerged. Tall, female, armor scorched and bloody. She carried 2 swords, both dripping red. When she saw Lucien, she stopped. The wolves around her stopped too, not following her orders, following her example, the way soldiers moved when their leader had earned loyalty through competence rather than fear. "Draven," she called. Her voice cut through the screaming. "I was hoping you'd be stupid enough to come back." "Mira." Lucien's posture shifted, not tense, focused. "Still alive? Impressive. You trained me to be unkillable. Shouldn't be surprised it worked." She walked closer. Her soldiers fanned out. 20, maybe 30, professional, disciplined, the kind of unit that had seen real combat and come out harder for it. "Heard you had a crisis of conscience. Walked away from the throne because you couldn't handle what you'd built." "Something like that." "That's disappointing. I always thought you were stronger than sentiment." "Guess I let you down." "You let everyone down!" Mira stopped 20 feet away. Her eyes tracked Arya for a second, calculating threat level, then dismissed her as irrelevant. "But you're back now, so either you've come to reclaim the throne or you've come to die. Which is it?" Neither. I've come to dismantle what I created. Can't do that. Empire's got momentum now. You can't just wish it away because you don't like what it became. Not planning to wish. Planning to break it piece by piece until there's nothing left. Mira smiled. Cold. Predatory. Then I guess we're enemies now. Guess so. She attacked. Fast. Brutally fast. Closing the distance in 3 strides with both blades aimed at vital points. Lucien met her head on, steel screaming against steel, sparks flying as they moved through forms that looked like choreography but carried lethal intent in every strike. Arya went for the soldiers. They didn't expect her. Why would they? She was just some woman standing beside Draven, probably a hostage or a toy or something irrelevant to actual combat. That dismissal cost the first one his life. She slipped inside his guard and opened his throat before he realized she was a threat. The second one managed to raise his weapon. She broke his knee and drove her blade through his ribs while he was falling. Then the others understood what was happening and came at her like a wave. She moved the way Lucien had taught her, fast, inside their reach, making her size an advantage instead of a weakness. She couldn't match their strength, so she didn't try, just targeted joints and arteries and eyes. The places where everyone was fragile, regardless of how much muscle they carried. A blade caught her shoulder. Pain exploded white-hot, but she kept moving. Couldn't stop. Stopping meant dying. She spun, drove her elbow into someone's face, felt cartilage crunch, pivoted, and opened another throat. Blood sprayed hot across her face. Someone grabbed her from behind, arms like iron bands crushing her ribs. She drove her head back, felt his nose break against her skull. His grip loosened. She twisted free and buried her knife in his gut. Twisted, dragged sideways. He screamed and fell, 15 seconds, maybe 20. 6 soldiers down, the rest backing up. Not retreating, reassessing, realizing this wasn't going to be easy. Arya's shoulder burned. Blood ran down her arm. But her hands were steady, and her breathing was controlled, and somewhere in the chaos she'd stopped being afraid. Stopped thinking, just became motion and violence, and the absolute certainty that she'd take as many with her as necessary. Behind her, Lucimas and Mira were still fighting. Their blades moved too fast to track, both of them bleeding, both still standing, both fighting with the kind of precision that came from years of training together and knowing exactly how the other moved. "You've gotten slow," Mira said. "You've gotten arrogant." Confidence, not arrogance. There's a difference. She feinted high, went low, her blade opening a line across Lucian's ribs. He didn't flinch, just reversed his grip and drove his pommel into her jaw. Her head snapped back. She stumbled. He could have killed her, had the opening, the momentum, but he didn't take it. Mira caught herself, wiped blood from her mouth, stared at him. "What are you waiting for?" she asked. "For you to remember what we fought for before it all went wrong. We fought for order, for control, for an empire where wolves didn't have to live in fear. No, you fought for that. I fought because I didn't know how to stop." His voice dropped. "But I'm stopping now, and I'm giving you one chance to walk away before this gets worse. There is no walking away. You taught me that. You said once you commit to war, you see it through to the end, or you die trying." She raised her swords. "So which is it, Lucien? You going to kill me, or are you still too soft to finish what you started?" Something shifted in his expression. Hardened, the last piece of restraint burning away. "I was hoping you'd choose differently," he said. "So was I." They collided again. Faster now. Harder. No more testing. No more measuring. Just pure lethal intent from 2 people who'd been friends once and were trying to kill each other now because the empire they'd built together had eaten everything else. Arya saw the moment it ended, saw Lucien's blade slip past Mira's guard and punch through her armor just below the ribs, saw her eyes go wide, saw her knees buckle. He caught her as she fell, lowered her gently to the blood-soaked stone. "That's twice you've beaten me," Mira whispered. Blood bubbled at her lips. "Starting to think you're better than me. I'm not better, just more desperate." "Desperate's good, keeps you sharp." Her eyes found his. "The other generals won't go down this easy. They've had 3 years to build their power bases. They'll come at you with armies. Let them." "Arrogant bastard. Learned from you." She laughed. It came out wet. "Liar. You were arrogant before we met." Her hand found his, gripped weakly.
Do me a favor? What? Make it mean something. All of this, the empire, the blood, everything we did. Her breathing was getting shallow. Don't let it just be violence for violence's sake. I'll try. That's not good enough. It's all I've got. Then I guess it'll have to be. Her eyes closed, opened again, focused on something past him. She's good. The woman. Fights like you trained her, like she doesn't know how to quit. Yeah. Keep her close. She'll keep you human when the monster takes over. Mira's grip tightened one last time. Promise me. I promise. Good. She exhaled, long and slow, didn't inhale again. Lucian stayed there for 3 seconds, holding her hand. Then he stood, wiped his blade clean, turned to face Arya across a courtyard full of bodies. We need to keep moving, he said. His voice was empty. Arya nodded. Her shoulder screamed, but she pushed it down. Pain could wait. Survival came first. They moved toward the fortress. What was left of Mira's soldiers scattered, not running, regrouping, looking for new orders from whoever managed to seize control in the chaos. The throne room was worse than before. Bodies everywhere, some wearing uniforms, some not. Blood painted the walls. The throne itself was on fire. Flames consuming the seat where Theron had tried to rule in Lucien's name. Theron stood in the center of the carnage. He'd been fighting. His armor was shredded. Blood ran from a dozen wounds, but he was standing, breathing, alive through sheer stubbornness. When he saw Lucien, he started laughing. You killed Mira, he said. Your best general, your oldest friend. And for what? To prove a point? To stop this from spreading. It's already spreading. You think killing 5 generals stops an empire? There's 50 more waiting in the territories, 100. They'll keep coming until someone strong enough to hold it together steps up. Theron spat blood. And that someone is you, whether you want it or not. Then I'll kill them too, and the next ones, and the next. Until there's no one left stupid enough to try. That's not a plan. That's a genocide. Yeah, it is. Because the alternative is letting this continue. Letting more cities burn, more families die, more wolves get crushed under the weight of something I built when I didn't know better. Lucien walked closer. So yeah, I'm going to commit genocide against my own empire. And when I'm done, maybe something better can grow in the ashes. Theron's expression twisted. Not rage, grief. The terrible understanding that his friend had truly gone insane and there was no bringing him back. I tried to save you, Theron said quietly. Tried to show you that what we built was worth fighting for, worth preserving. I know, and I'm sorry I couldn't be what you needed. Sorry doesn't fix this. Nothing fixes this, that's the point. Theron drew his last weapon, a short blade, chipped and stained but still sharp. Then I guess we're doing this. Guess so. They moved, not like Lucien's Mira, not the practiced dance of soldiers who'd trained together. This was rawer, more desperate. 2 men who'd built an empire together now trying to tear each other apart because one believed in what they'd created and the other believed it needed to die. Theron was slower, injured, but he fought like someone with nothing left to lose. Every strike committed, every block sacrificing something vital for a chance at landing a killing blow. Lucien fought like inevitability, calm, methodical, wearing Theron down blow by blow, watching for the moment when exhaustion and blood loss finally caught up. It came 30 seconds in. Theron stumbled, just slightly. His guard dropped an inch. Lucien's blade found his chest, slid between ribs, pierced something vital. Theron gasped, looked down at the steel in his chest, then up at Lucien. This doesn't end here, he whispered. They'll keep coming, keep rebuilding, keep trying to resurrect what you're trying to kill. I know. Then why do it? Because even if I fail, at least I tried to be better than what I was. Lucien's voice cracked. And maybe that's enough. It's not. Theron's legs gave out. Lucien lowered him to the floor. But I hope you're right. He died there. On the floor of the throne room he'd tried to hold together, surrounded by the ruins of everything they'd built. Lucien stood slowly. His hands were shaking. Arya walked up beside him and took one of those shaking hands in hers.
held it tight. "We need to go," she said. "More will come. We can't fight them all." "I know." "Then move." They turned toward the exit, got 3 steps before the doors slammed open and wolves poured in. Not soldiers, generals. The other 4. They'd been waiting, watching, letting Lucien exhaust himself before they made their move. The one in front was massive, 7 feet of muscle and scars and absolute confidence. He smiled when he saw Lucien's expression. "Hello, old friend," he said. "Been a long time." Lucien's hand tightened on his blade. "Marcus, in the flesh. Brought my brothers too. Figured if we're taking down the Alpha King, might as well make it a family reunion." The other 3 spread out, blocking every exit, all of them armed, all of them fresh, none of them carrying the exhaustion that was making Lucien's hands shake and his breathing ragged. Arya counted exits, counted weapons, counted the seconds until they were completely surrounded. There was no way out. Not through them. Not without dying. "Last chance," Marcus said. "Join us. Help us rebuild properly, or die here and let the Empire continue without you." Lucien looked at Arya. His eyes held an apology and a question and a terrible certainty about how this was going to end. She understood what he was asking, understood what he needed her to do. "No," she said. "Arya, but we fight. Together. That's how this goes." "You'll die." "Then I die standing instead of running." She raised her blades. "Now shut up and show me how an Alpha King bleeds." Lucien stared at her. Then, despite everything, he smiled. Real. Genuine. The first honest smile she'd seen since they walked through those gates. "All right," he said. "Let's give them a fight worth remembering." The 4 generals moved as one, closing in like a vice, like wolves who'd spent years learning how to hunt the most dangerous prey alive. And in the center of the burning throne room, surrounded by bodies and ash and the ruins of an empire, Lucien Draven and Arya Vale raised their weapons and prepared to face the ending they'd chosen instead of the one they'd been given. The first general lunged, steel met steel, and the world exploded into violence. The first general came at Lucien with the kind of speed that proved he'd been training for this moment since the day Lucien walked away. His blade traced an arc meant to separate head from shoulders. Lucien twisted, felt steel whisper past his throat close enough to draw blood. He drove his elbow into the man's ribs, heard bone crack, spun, and opened the back of his knee with a slash that dropped him screaming. Marcus was on him before the first one hit the ground. 2 swords moving in patterns Lucien had taught him 15 years ago. Attack high, feint low, reverse grip, and come up through the blind spot. Except Lucien had taught him that, which meant he knew exactly where the killing blow would come from. He sidestepped, let Marcus's momentum carry him past, and buried his knife in the soft spot behind his collarbone. Not deep enough to kill, deep enough to make his left arm useless. The other 2 came together, coordinated, professional. They'd planned this, spent hours figuring out how to kill someone who'd survived 100 battles through sheer brutal competence. One went high, one went low. And for half a second, Lucien saw the trap closing. Then Arya hit the one going low from the side like a falling stone. She'd picked up a sword from one of the dead soldiers, too heavy for her, too long. But she swung it with everything she had and caught the general across the face. His head snapped sideways, teeth flew. He stumbled back, blood pouring from his ruined mouth. The one going high adjusted mid-strike to deal with her. Big mistake. Lucien was already moving. His blade found the gap in the general's armor, where neck met shoulder, found it, and kept going until steel scraped spine. The man made a wet, gurgling sound and collapsed. 3 down. 2 injured. Marcus and the one Arya had hit still on their feet but bleeding and slow. The throne room felt smaller now, hotter. The fire had spread to the walls, smoke filling the space with toxic gray fog. Breathing hurt. Seeing was getting harder, but stopping meant dying, so nobody stopped. Marcus pressed his hand to his shoulder, trying to staunch the bleeding. His face was pale, but his eyes were clear, focused. The look of someone who understood exactly how bad things were and refused to quit anyway. That's what loyalty looked like, Lucien thought. Not blind obedience, not fear, just the terrible stubborn certainty that the cause was worth dying for, even when death was guaranteed. He'd built an empire on men like Marcus. Men who would follow orders into hell because they believed in something bigger than survival. And now he was killing them for it. The General Arya had hit spat blood and charged. Reckless. Desperate. The move of someone who knew they were dead already and just wanted to take someone with them. Arya tried to raise her sword, but exhaustion made her slow. The general's blade came down. Lucian got there first, caught the strike on his own blade, felt the impact jar his already screaming arms, held it. Their faces were inches apart. The general's eyes were wide, young, maybe 25, barely old enough to have fought in the wars that built this empire, too young to die for someone else's sins. Lucian's knee came up, caught the kid in the stomach. As he folded, Lucian reversed his grip and brought the pommel down on the base of his skull. Hard enough to put him down. Not hard enough to kill. The kid hit the floor and didn't move. Marcus saw it. Saw Lucian show mercy when mercy was weakness. His expression shifted. Not gratitude. Something colder. Understanding mixed with disappointment. "You really have gone soft," he said. "Maybe." Lucien's breathing was ragged. "Or maybe I'm tired of killing people who don't deserve it. He's a soldier. We all deserve it." "No, you deserve a choice. He's young enough he doesn't know the difference yet." Marcus laughed. Bitter. "You think sparing one kid changes what you've done, what you're doing right now?" "No, but it's a start." "A start to what?" "To being something other than the monster everyone thinks I am." Marcus shook his head. Blood dripped from his fingers. "You don't get to just decide you're not a monster, Lucian. You built an empire on corpses, conquered territories through fear, made wolves bow or die. That doesn't go away because you had a crisis and walked away for 3 years." "I know." "Then why are you doing this? Why tear it all down instead of fixing it?" "Because fixing it means becoming the Alpha King again. And I'd rather die than spend one more day pretending that crown was anything other than a collar." Marcus took a step forward. His legs shook. He was dying, knew it, could probably feel his heartbeat getting weaker with every pump that sent more blood onto the stone floor. But he kept moving because that's what soldiers did. They advanced until their bodies physically couldn't anymore. "Then die," Marcus said quietly. "But know that everyone who suffers after this is on you. Every city that burns, every pack that fractures, every wolf that dies in the chaos you're creating, you own all of it." "I know that too. And it doesn't stop you." "No. Because living with my guilt is better than living as their king." Marcus nodded slowly, like Lucian had just confirmed something he'd suspected. Then he dropped his sword. "Just let it fall." The clatter echoed through the burning throne room. "I'm done," he said. "Kill me or let me bleed out. Either way, you win." Lucian walked closer, stood in front of the man who'd been his right hand for a decade, who'd fought beside him through campaigns that turned battlefields into graveyards, who'd believed in the Empire even when Lucian stopped believing in himself. "I'm sorry," Lucian said. "For what?" "For making you think this was worth dying for." "It was worth it, still is. You're just too broken to see it anymore." Marcus's knees buckled. Lucian caught him, lowered him to the floor. "Promise me something." "What?" "After you're done burning it all down, after the Empire's dead and buried, build something better." Marcus's hand found Lucian's, gripped weakly. "Don't just leave ashes. Give them something to replace what you're taking." "I don't know how." "Then learn. Because if you don't, this was all for nothing. Every battle, every sacrifice. Every person who died believing they were building something permanent." Blood bubbled at his lips. "Make it mean something, Lucian, even if you have to become someone new to do it." His hand went slack. His eyes lost focus. And Marcus Cade, general of the Northern Territories, and the last man still loyal to an empire that didn't exist anymore, died holding the hand of the king who destroyed everything they'd built together. Lucian stayed there for 5 seconds. Then he stood, looked at Arya. She was leaning against a pillar, sword point down on the floor, breathing hard. Blood ran from a dozen cuts. Her shoulder was soaked red. But she was standing, still alive, still refusing to quit. "We need to move," she said. Her voice was steady despite the pain. "Fire's getting worse." "Yeah." They walked toward the exit, stepping over bodies, through smoke and heat and the ruins of power that had once seemed eternal. The throne was completely engulfed now, flames consuming the seat where Lucian had sat exactly 3 times before deciding he'd rather die than do it again. Outside, the courtyard was chaos. Wolves fighting wolves, soldiers turning on each other as the command structure collapsed, and everyone scrambled to either seize power or escape before the whole fortress came down. Nobody paid attention to the 2 blood-soaked figures walking through the carnage. Just 2 more bodies in a sea of violence. They made it to the gates before Arya's legs gave out. Lucien caught her, held her up. She tried to push him away, but her arms wouldn't cooperate. "I'm fine," she said. "You're not." "Close enough." He picked her up. She didn't have the strength to protest. Just let him carry her through the gates, away from the burning fortress, toward the river that ran black under the smoke-stained sky. 2 miles. That's how far he carried her before he couldn't carry her anymore. His own body was screaming, wounds from the fight with Mira and Theron and 4 generals catching up all at once. He made it to the riverbank and collapsed, just folded like someone had cut his strings. They lay there in the mud, breathing, bleeding, listening to the distant sounds of an empire eating itself. "Are we dying?" Arya asked. "Maybe. Hard to tell." "That's not comforting." "Wasn't meant to be, was meant to be honest." She laughed. It came out wet. "You're terrible at this." "At what?" "Surviving. You keep trying to get yourself killed and dragging me along for the ride." "You could have left, multiple times." "Yeah, I could have." She turned her head to look at him. Her face was pale under the blood and dirt. "Why didn't I?" "Because you're as stubborn as I am, and twice as stupid." "That's romantic." "Wasn't trying to be romantic. Was trying to be accurate." They were quiet for a moment. Just the sound of water and distant screaming and something massive collapsing inside the fortress. Another tower, probably. The whole structure would be gone by morning. A monument to power reduced to rubble in a single night. "What do we do now?" Arya asked quietly. "Keep breathing. See if we wake up tomorrow. Figure it out from there." "That's not a plan." "It's the only one I've got left." She reached over, found his hand in the mud, laced her fingers through his. Both of them were shaking, both too exhausted to care. "I'm glad you came back," she said. "To the Empire?" "To me. When I ran. You could have let me go. Could have done all this alone, but you came after me. Didn't have a choice. You'd already seen too much, knew too much." "Liar." "Yeah, I am." She squeezed his hand. "Tell me the truth." Lucian stared up at the smoke-filled sky, at stars barely visible through the haze, at a world that kept turning regardless of how many empires fell or how many kings tried to walk away from their thrones. "The truth is," he said slowly, "I spent 15 years being what everyone needed me to be. Strong, brutal, unkillable. The Alpha King who conquered territories and crushed rebellions and made wolves bow through sheer force of will. And it worked. For a while. But then I started seeing the cost. Not just in bodies. In what it did to me. How it turned me into something that couldn't stop. Couldn't slow down. Couldn't be anything except the monster everyone expected. So you ran." "So I ran. Told myself I was walking away. That distance would fix what was broken. That if I just stopped being the king, I could start being human again." He looked at her. "Then I met you. And for the first time in 15 years, someone looked at me and didn't see a weapon, didn't see power or fear or something to use, just saw someone worth saving. I didn't save you." "You did. You just don't know it yet." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "Every time you refused to run. Every time you stood beside me when walking away was smarter. Every time you looked at me like I was worth the risk. You were saving me from the thing I'd become. Reminding me there was something worth fighting for besides territory and fear." Arya was quiet. When she spoke, her voice was thick. "That's a lot of weight to put on someone. I know. And I'm sorry. You deserve better than getting dragged into my mess. Maybe. But I'm here anyway, and I don't regret it. Even now? Even after everything? Especially after everything." She shifted closer, pressed against his side. "Because you're right. Power doesn't make you strong. Fear doesn't make you safe. The only thing that matters is whether you can look at yourself and not hate what you see. And after tonight, after watching you burn down everything you built because it was the right thing to do, even when it cost you everything, I think you're finally becoming someone you can live with." Lucien's chest tightened. He'd killed hundreds, maybe thousands, built an empire on violence and walked away when he couldn't stomach what he'd created, spent 3 years hiding, then came back and tore it all down in a single night. And somehow, covered in blood and mud and barely alive, he felt more human than he had in 15 years. "We should keep moving," he said. "Those kids are waiting." "Can you move?" "Not really. You?" "Not even a little." "Then I guess we're staying here." "Guess so." They lay there as the sun started rising, pink light filtering through smoke, warming mud and blood, and two people who'd survived the night through sheer stubborn refusal to quit. Around them, the sounds of fighting were fading, not because the battle was won, because there was nothing left worth fighting for. The Empire was dead, really dead, not dormant or waiting or ready to resurrect, just gone. And in its place was nothing except questions about what came next. Arya felt consciousness slipping, blood loss and exhaustion finally catching up. But before the dark took her, she felt Lucien's hand tighten on hers, felt his voice in her ear, rough and certain despite the uncertainty surrounding them. "I've got you," he said. "Whatever happens next, I've got you." She believed him. Then the world went black. Arya woke to sunlight and the smell of cooking meat. She tried to sit up. Her body disagreed violently. Every muscle screamed. Her shoulder was bandaged, so were her ribs and her left leg, and probably half a dozen other places she couldn't see. "Don't move," Lucien's voice. Close by. "You're still healing." She turned her head. He sat beside a small fire, tending to something that smelled amazing. His shirt was off. Bandages wrapped his torso, more around his arms. A particularly nasty-looking bruise covered half his face. "You look like hell," she said. "You should see yourself." "How long was I out?" 2 days. Fever broke this morning." "Where are we?" "The safe house, with the kids. They found us by the river, helped drag us here." He poured water into a cup, brought it over, held it to her lips. "Drink, slowly." The water was cold and tasted like heaven. She drank until the cup was empty. "The Empire?" she asked. "Gone. The fortress burned completely. Most of the generals are dead. The ones who survived scattered. Some are trying to hold their territories. Most are just running." He set the cup aside. "It'll take years for the territories to stabilize. Decades, maybe. But the centralized power structure is finished." "What about Theron's soldiers? The ones still loyal?" "They're arguing over who should lead. It'll probably turn into a civil war within a civil war. Eventually, someone will win, or everyone will lose. Either way, it's not our problem anymore." Arya studied his face, looking for regret, for doubt, for any sign that walking away from the ashes of his empire was eating him alive. She didn't find it, just exhaustion and something that might have been relief. "Are you okay?" she asked. "No, but I will be." He touched her face gently, traced the line of a bandage across her cheek. "You almost died 3 times. Your shoulder was infected. Your ribs were cracked. You lost enough blood the kids thought you were already gone." "But I'm not." "No, you're not. You're just as stubborn dying as you are living." "Learned from the best." He smiled, small, real. "Yeah, you did. They were quiet for a moment, just existing in the morning light, alive despite everything, together despite all the reasons they shouldn't be." "What do we do now?" Arya asked. "We can't stay here forever. The territories will be chaos for years. Someone will come looking eventually." "I know. I've been thinking about that." Lucien stood, walked to the edge of the clearing where morning sun broke through trees. Marcus said something before he died, about building something better, about not just leaving ashes. "You want to rebuild?" "No. I want to do something different. The Empire failed because it was built on fear, on forcing wolves to submit through violence. That doesn't work. Not long term. It just breeds resentment and rebellion and eventual collapse." He turned back to her. "But what if we built something based on choice? On pacts governing themselves without some central power dictating terms?" "That's called anarchy." "No. That's called freedom, with structure. with rules everyone agrees to instead of rules enforced through fear. He walked back, knelt beside her. There are dozens of small packs out there, displaced, broken, looking for leadership but terrified of another empire. What if we help them organize? Not as subjects, as partners. You're talking about creating an alliance. I'm talking about creating a network where strong packs help weak ones, where territories are shared instead of conquered, where disputes are settled through negotiation instead of bloodshed. His eyes held hers. It won't be perfect. There'll still be fights, still be wolves who want more than their share, but it'll be better than what was. And better is all we can ask for. Arya stared at him. At the man who'd been the most feared Alpha King in the North, now talking about cooperation and shared governance like it wasn't complete insanity. That'll take decades, she said. Probably. It might not work at all. Probably won't. But trying and failing is better than not trying. And you're willing to spend the rest of your life on something that might collapse? Yeah, I am, because the alternative is doing nothing. And I've tried that. It doesn't work either. He took her hand. But I can't do it alone. I'm too broken, too associated with the old empire, too much of a reminder of what failed. I need someone beside me who wolves can look at and see something different, someone who survived the empire instead of building it. You're asking me to help you build a new world. I'm asking you to build it with me. There's a difference. Arya looked at their joined hands, at the scars and calluses and blood that still lingered under broken nails. At two people who'd barely survived the collapse of everything and were somehow talking about building something from the rubble. It was insane. Impossible. Exactly the kind of stubborn, hopeless idealism that got people killed. Okay, she said. Lucienne blinked. Okay? Yeah, okay, let's build something better. Let's help broken packs find their feet. Let's create this insane alliance that probably won't work but might be worth trying anyway. She squeezed his hand. But if we're doing this, we're doing it right. No secrets, no lies, no more pretending to be something we're not. Agreed. And if it starts feeling like the Empire again, if we start using fear instead of trust, we walk away. Immediately. No second chances. Agreed. And you have to promise me something. What? That you'll stop trying to be the monster everyone thinks you are. That you'll let yourself be human, flawed, uncertain, all the things kings aren't allowed to be. She pulled him closer. Because the man I fell in love with wasn't the Alpha King. It was the person underneath, the one who saved orphans and cooked venison and taught me how to fight, not because it made me useful, but because it made me strong. Lucian's eyes were bright, not tears, just emotion too raw to hide anymore. I don't know if I can do that. Then I'll remind you every day, until you believe it. She kissed him, gentle, careful of injuries. Deal? Deal. 3 months later, they stood in a clearing surrounded by representatives from 18 packs. Small ones, broken ones. The survivors of the Empire's collapse who were trying to figure out how to live in a world without central authority. Lucien had grown his hair longer. Let the gray show. Traded armor for simple clothes. He looked less like the Alpha King and more like someone who'd been through war and come out older but wiser for it. Arya stood beside him. Her shoulder had healed, so had the ribs. The scars remained, but she wore them like proof she'd survived instead of evidence she'd been broken. The pack leaders watched them with expressions ranging from skeptical to desperate to cautiously hopeful. "Thank you for coming," Lucien said. His voice carried across the clearing without needing to shout. Old habit. I know most of you know who I am, what I was, and I'm not going to stand here and pretend the past didn't happen. I built an empire on violence, conquered your territories, made wolves bow or die. All of that is true, and I can't change it. Silence. Hostile. Waiting for the inevitable declaration of renewed dominance. But I'm not here to rebuild what I destroyed. I'm here to offer something different, a coalition, not an empire, a network where each pack governs itself, where territories belong to those who live there instead of whoever has the strongest army, where disputes are settled through council instead of combat. And who leads this coalition? One of the pack leaders called. Male, scarred, old enough to remember when the empire was just starting. You?
No, no one leads. That's the point. We make decisions together, by vote. One pack, one voice. Majority rules. That's chaos. Maybe. But it's chaos where everyone has agency instead of chaos where one person makes decisions for everyone else. Another leader stood, female, young. Her pack's territory had been razed during the Civil War. What's stopping you from consolidating power again? From turning this coalition into just another empire?
Nothing, except my word. And her. He nodded at Arya. She's here to make sure I don't become what I was. And if I try, she has my permission to kill me and anyone stupid enough to follow me. Arya stepped forward. I know what you're thinking, that this is too good to be true, that he's manipulating you into giving him power through different means. And maybe you're right to be suspicious, but I've seen him burn down everything he built because it was the right thing to do. I've seen him fight and bleed and nearly die to stop the Empire from continuing. So yeah, maybe he's lying. Maybe this is all a trick, but I don't think so. And if I'm wrong, I'll be the first one to put a knife in his back. The clearing was silent. Then someone laughed, bitter and tired. That's the most honest pitch I've ever heard. It's the only one I've got, Lucian said. Join us or don't. But know that the alternative is spending the next decade fighting over scraps while your packs starve and your territories burn. This won't fix everything, but it's a chance to build something that doesn't require conquest to survive. The pack leaders looked at each other, whispered, argued. Finally, the old male stood. I'll join. Not because I trust you, because I'm tired, and my pack deserves better than more war. One by one, others stood. Not all of them, maybe half. But half was better than none. And slowly, carefully, something new began to take shape in the ruins of what had fallen. 2 years after that, Arya stood on a ridge overlooking a valley where 3 packs had built a shared settlement. Houses instead of dens, gardens instead of hunting grounds, children playing in streets that had been battlefields a decade earlier. Lucien walked up beside her. Gray dominated his hair now. New scars marked his hands, but his eyes were clearer than she'd ever seen them. It's working, she said. Some of it. Other parts are falling apart. The southern territories are still fighting. Eastern packs refuse to cooperate. We've got maybe a 30% success rate. That's 30% better than 0. True. He put his arm around her shoulders. She leaned into him. Marcus would probably say I've gone completely soft. Marcus is dead. His opinion doesn't count anymore. Yeah, but I still think about what he said, about making it mean something. And does it mean something? Lucien was quiet for a long moment, watching children who would grow up never knowing the Alpha King except as a cautionary tale, watching wolves build lives instead of preparing for war. Yeah, he said finally, I think it does. They stood there as the sun set. 2 people who'd survived empire and war and the terrible weight of trying to be better than what they'd been. It wasn't perfect, wasn't even close, but it was better. And better was enough. Below them, someone started singing. Others joined in. Not a war chant, not a hymn of conquest, just a song about harvest and home and the simple joy of surviving another day. Arya took Lucian's hand. No more running, no more running. No more empires, no more empires. Just this? Just trying to help broken things heal? Just this. She smiled, kissed him as the sun painted the valley gold and red and beautiful. Then I guess we're exactly where we're supposed to be. And for the first time in both their lives, neither of them felt the need to look over their shoulder or plan the next escape or prepare for the inevitable moment when everything fell apart, because they'd already survived the falling. Already walked through fire and come out scarred but standing. Already learned that strength wasn't about domination or fear or ruling through violence. It was about getting back up when the world knocked you down. About choosing to build instead of destroy. About finding someone worth fighting for and refusing to let go even when letting go was easier. The Alpha King was dead. The Empire was ash. And in their place stood 2 people who'd learned how to be human again. That was the real victory, not conquest. not power. Just the quiet triumph of survival and the terrible, beautiful hope that tomorrow might be better than today. And as darkness fell across the valley and lanterns began to glow in windows, Lucian Draven and Arya Vale walked down from the ridge toward the settlement below. Not as rulers, not as legends, just as two people who'd been through hell and decided heaven was worth building one small piece at a time. Behind them, the mountains stood eternal, indifferent, silent witnesses to empires that rose and fell like waves breaking against stone. But in the valley below, life continued, stubborn, resilient, refusing to be crushed by history. And that, more than any crown or throne or empire, was worth everything they'd sacrificed to make it real.